Hi everybody, welcome back to the SAICE Transport Division's video series, 15 Minutes with the Transport Professional. I'm Erin De Silva, Head of Student Outreach. Today we have Andre Frieslaar with us, who is a public transport planner as well as a transport planner. And we're very privileged to have him here today to speak to us. So thank you so much, Andre, for making the time to speak with us today. So first I'm going to ask you, can you please just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your career and things that you like about public transport planning?
Thanks, Erin. Well, hi, everybody. It's really great to be able to share with you today. So I left school and went off to UCT and graduated in 1989 with a BSc in civil engineering. I had visions of building bridges, and that was what sort of got me into engineering. I worked for a couple of years on site for a construction company, and then realized all that concrete and dust was not for me. So I then took the first job I could get with a consulting firm and joined HHA Consulting Engineers in 1992. And the position I took was in the Traffic Engineering and Transport Planning Department. And I had no prior interest in traffic and transportation. It was, I think, out of desperation that to get away from the dust and the concrete that I took the job. But immediately I enjoyed various aspects of traffic engineering and transport planning, particularly the problem-solving aspects of it, and getting into sort of analysis and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. I loved the analytical side of it, using the software packages that were available for us to analyze things, and the modeling of transport networks. I also enjoyed the creative aspects of it, getting involved in conceptualizing transport infrastructure and solutions to transport problems. But I think, from a transport planning perspective, the thing that I enjoyed as well, which was quite surprising, was that we got involved in professional teams. And we were able to be creative with parcels of land and develop, sort of ideas with land use planners, architects, and developers, and come up with, new urban developments. So I found that interaction with other professionals quite exciting, and really cut my teeth on exciting projects in Cape Town, mostly on like the V&A waterfront. Where we got involved in a lot of the transport planning there and traffic impact assessments of the waterfront. We did a transport assessment for the Table Mountain Cableway upgrade, one of my early projects, and then also got involved in the Century City development in Cape Town, doing a lot of transport planning work and traffic engineering work. So that's sort of a flavor of how I got involved in transport planning, and ended up having a career in transport planning.
So Andre, you've actually outlined quite a few sort of landmark projects that I'm sure a lot of the followers and that will be they'll know about. So can you sort of give us a bit more of an understanding of what entails being a transport planner? What do you do, and what do you need to do to actually become one?
Sure. So I had a quick look at what Wikipedia says about what transport planning is, because they're definitely more eloquent than I am at times. But it said it's defined as the planning required in the operation, provision, and management of facilities and services for the modes of transport to achieve safer, faster, comfortable, convenient, economical, environmentally friendly movement of people and goods. And fundamentally, transportation is a basic need for people. If people can't travel, their lives are impoverished. They can't get to work. They can't get to areas of opportunity. So people need access and mobility to work, to learn, to socialize, to relax, and to really challenge themselves and to function within our urban environments. So I saw my role as a transport planner as being somebody who could facilitate the movement of people and allow them to get to where they need to go. So really, in terms of the principles of transport planning, you have to look quite when you're looking at transport planning, you've got to look at land use development as well. The two are inextricably linked, and so that's why we often in professional teams get called in to assist developers and land use planners and architects come up with a proper sort of land use transport proposal for a development. And so in the urban context, you've got to look at different perspectives, and obviously there's a land use perspective. You're looking at the quality and livability of urban environments. What has happened in the past is there's been a lot of sprawl. There are a lot of mono sort of functional developments, and then you have a lot of crime at night because you might have sort of residential precincts during the day which are empty and CBDs which are empty at night. We've had the decline of our central business districts, and also because of urban sprawl, we've had a loss of agricultural and wilderness land. And so from an environmental perspective, we've also had sort of traffic congestion causing huge greenhouse gas emissions, and then we've also had the scarcity of oil and that sort of thing. We're coming up against. But in the terms of the transport planning perspective, we've had to grapple with this whole issue of congestion. And I think as a transport planner, our main focus is to look at attractive car competitive alternatives and look at the necessity of travel, and try and bring land use and transport, sort of the live, work and play aspect of people's lives closer together, so they don't travel massive distances between where they work and where they live. So the challenge really as a transport planner is really to devise ways of developing a transport system that will reduce the present excessive dependence on the private car that has been part of the planning that has been around since the 60s. And really our challenge is to provide more efficient transport services and infrastructure that support livable cities and communities where people can maybe walk and cycle to work opportunities, can use safe public transport, and the like. So, just to take it a step further, there are certain sort of tools that we use in transport planning, and fundamental to transport planning is what we call the four-step process. And so, the four-step process, I'll just go through that in a nutshell. So from the land use that you have for a particular development, you will be able to, using standard trip generation rates, generate the number of person trips that a particular land use development will generate, because that's often what the authorities want to know. You've got this development. How many trips are going to be generated by this development? Then the next step is, where are these trips going to go? What are the origins and destinations of these trips on the transport network? The next question you need to ask is, what modes will these trips manifest in? Will they be car trips? Will they be public transport trips? Will they be walking and cycling trips? And we have to do that split. And finally, we need to look at trip assignment, and that is really allocating these trips based on your distribution network and your modes to the transport network. And then we can start to look at the implications thereof in terms of the impact on the current network. And some of those mitigations that we come up with as part of this process could be in terms of car engineering or road space. It could be improvements to junctions and links, like roads and intersections. Or in terms of public transport, it could be the introduction of new public transport routes and services. Or in the case of non-motorized transport, it could be new infrastructure like bicycle lanes, pedestrian routes, and the like. So I think that gives you a sort of broad perspective of what transport planning is, both the sort of the context in which we're working, and then really the sort of four-step process that helps us to assess and analyze transport developments.
Yeah, that really was quite an intriguing. You almost show how transport planning as a profession has actually sort of like grown, and it's morphed as we've moved away from the car, and now we're looking more at more sustainable modes and stuff. You're walking and cycling and stuff like that, which is really interesting. And I even liked it how when you gave us that definition of transport planning, how it literally just ranks sustainability. I mean, it's got the three pillars of it. It's the economy, it's the society, and it's obviously the environment. And it's how this harmony has to come through, which is obviously what the transport plan is trying to do. So you've sort of told us a bit about the innovative or the interesting projects that you've worked on. I mean, the cableway, as well as the V&A waterfront. But do you have any other big major projects that you've worked on that some of our viewers would obviously want to go and have a look at?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share. So I mentioned the waterfront, the V&A waterfront. I was fortunate enough to be involved in this project from the very early stages when there was just Ferryman's pub. So in this project, we were able to develop a transport model of the whole waterfront. We were able to develop, allocate the land use in this transport model to each of these different precincts. Obviously generate the trips, do all that 4-step process, and then look at the major gateways and links and routes within the waterfront, and then obviously help the waterfront make decisions about which links to put in, when, and slowly but surely, the waterfront has developed over the years. So that's been a very exciting project to see come to fruition. So that was the first one I mentioned. The second one was the Table Mountain Cableway. Was an interesting project, this one, just to give a different slant on transport planning. So here we had to, I basically used a spreadsheet model to help understand, once you change the capacity of the cable car, what if impact that would have to the queue at the bottom station, and the amount of cars parked on Tafelberg Road, because now suddenly you've got more people going up and down much faster, and obviously the duration of stay in the queue and in the parking area reduces. And it was an interesting transport planning little exercise we did there, and we had to motivate that as part of the environmental impact assessment for this upgrade. We also got involved in the Cape Town International Convention Centre in the phase 1 of this project. This was again an interesting project in that here we didn't have standard trip generation rates for all the different types of exhibits, and we had to almost build these up from first principles. So we had to look at if you had a major exhibition here with a trade fair, what is how would the parking and travel demand or parking demand build up during the day? How would the hotel need parking? How much would the offices need parking? And then we would use again sort of analytical and spreadsheet type techniques to try and generate the trips and the parking demands from a facility like this. So it wasn't a conventional thing, but it required us to think laterally about how we would sort of analyze the impact of this development. And the other aspect of it is that it involved public transport as well. We had to look at how on major days we could bring lots and lots of people in here on public transport and get them efficiently in and out of the building. So again, a very interesting project, and which showcased quite a lot of transport planning sort of expertise. The next one, the roads project. So often we get involved in looking at innovative ideas for upgrades to major interchanges. This was a project we got involved in. It's the Kuburg interchange in Cape Town, where we had a very busy, it was the busiest interchange in Cape Town, and we had the challenge of trying to upgrade this and improve it while it was under construction. And again, it was trying to come up with what was the best strategy for that. And in this, we came up with these 2 directional ramps, which you can see in the artist's impression here. But we had to model that. We had to, prove to the authorities that this could work, and we had to, demonstrate it and get the approval the funding of it. So it was, again, an exciting project which used a different set of transport planning skills. I think I've got one or two more. So this one here is a site which was developed or was being planned in the Somerset West area, and this is a more conventional transport planning kind of approach, where we work with a professional team. You come up with a road network. You look at your public transport connections. You come up with a public transport network. You look at your coverage, so that everyone is within a certain distance of a good public transport, and you provide that sort of transport layer to a development, so that the development can hang off it, but also that it can be an efficient transport solution for the future development of that site. Yeah, and then my final one really is, in Cape Town, around the container terminal and the Culemborg site, we were involved here in looking at a multimodal response to a very strategic point in the infrastructure in Cape Town, the Port of Cape Town, and the container terminal, the functioning of the port. And we had a look at how we could also service additional land in the Culemborg area, and that really involved coming up with a range of transport proposals, where we propose new interchanges. Those are the white lines there you can see. The blue line is the current freeway system, and then we also came up with, we had to overlay that with our public transport system, which is the green lines. So you can see, as a transport planner, you get given the latitude to dream and to come up with solutions for problems, but really to provide the blueprints for how development can take place efficiently in the future, once these land use parcels can be developed.
I think, yeah, just from the projects that you've shown us, and that really shows the depth of what a transport plan can actually do, which is super incredible. And you spoke about lateral thinking and all of that, but obviously that comes with experience and doing a lot of projects and stuff like that. So in your opinion, what are the challenges associated with this field, and especially what are the main pitfalls that you find young engineers make, obviously when they've come in and they start tackling transport planning problems and projects?
Okay, so yeah, in terms of the challenges with this field, I think the challenge is we need to be careful not to sink back into the old tricks, where we find ourselves designing for cars only. We almost need to be designing for people. I think that is the main sort of refocus we need to have. We need to realize that every car trip ends, or public transport trip ends, with people on foot. And we almost need to sort of invert the importance and priority. So we need to start with walking trips, cycling trips, and public transport. Those are the three most important things we need to think about. We then need to think about service and freight delivery to developments, and then start to think about whether we can come up with any other higher occupancy vehicle modes. And then obviously private car and motorcycle trips are at the bottom end of it. Obviously need to be considered, because in our cities our public transport systems aren't developed enough. But as we develop more and more, and hopefully public transport will become more and more prevalent, we can start to really tip things in the way of walking, cycling, and public transport. So I think that for me is the first major challenge. I think secondly, engineers tend to enjoy getting a problem and closing themselves away in a little room and working on it. And I think transport planners can't afford to do that. We need to work closely with other professionals. We need to develop, these, what I describe as these quality, livable urban environments. And that often, we need to realize that as transport planners, we can't just learn transport planning skills. We need to be exposed to other thinking, and we need to be exposed to urban designers, to land use planners, and to understanding the benefits of mixed use, transit oriented type of developments. And also realize that 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 if we don't do that, we can affect the way people live and the efficiency in which they live. And then I think another challenge is that we really do need to develop skills in conceptualizing innovative solutions, and learning to communicate them. I think as engineers we need to make sure that we can visualize these things well, that we can come up with good, well thought through arguments, because often with transport projects and motivating good transport solutions, we need to be convincing. So just thinking about young engineers and planners getting involved, I think we'd be careful not to sort of rigorously, you've learned about the 4-step process. Don't just rigorously apply that and blindly apply it. I think you need to, read extensively, be exposed to what people are saying in the transport planning field, work with experienced transport planners, learn from other disciplines and other professionals within the transport planning field, and develop a well-rounded response to transport planning, and get your priorities correct, and I think that will stand you in good stead in terms of being a good transport planner.
Andre, thank you. I think you summed it up beautifully there at the end. We design for people, and ultimately that's what we're there for. And I just think that, just understanding that there's a lot of disciplines that come into, making a city work, making a development work, and all of that is absolutely on point. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today. We've really learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure that we might get some questions that I'll probably just direct to you.
Fantastic. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.